Brandon Clyburn here with Ryan Harris and my CTO, Matt Davis, to talk about Panoptive. I want to go into our background a little bit first because it does inform the product. So me and Matt, my co-founder, have come from 35 combined years at larger scale organizations doing analytic initiatives. So between designing, building, initiating programs for data warehouses, business intelligence, and more recently some direct support to C-level executives, we've found some gaps in certain parts of those solutions, and we think we've got maybe a better way to do that. So what we're targeting specifically within that space is how to establish the optimal route from business question to informed answer. There's a lot of tools out there, and they usually are a tool and it does this function, go learn that tool, go install that tool. We're wanting to address that in a little bit of a different way. So again, the problem space within organizations today, inefficiency and ineffectiveness of just answering basic questions. So let's look at that space. You take a leader within an organization, and invariably a few times a month that leader will ask a question. What's going on with this? And it's usually the negative. It's usually, why is sales down? I saw last month's sales report. Why is sales down last month? So let's talk about how that process works. Usually that leader will hand it off to somebody in their direct organization, so their line of hierarchy. Maybe it's the VP, so it's a C-level asking the question. So maybe it's a VP they hand it off to, maybe it's the manager, maybe it trickles down to a data analyst. Depending on the size of the organization, a different person might handle that. But in any of those cases, they've got a lot of questions to follow up on. Why is sales down? I'm not just going to go look at the sales number. I need to look at all the products. Is there a particular product that's affected, or a particular region that's affected, or a customer segment? Is it a trend? Are there competitive pressures? Was there a weather event that closed stores? There's a lot of questions that they have to go get to fully answer and inform the original question of why is sales down. Now, that data usually exists. The organization will typically have that data, but does that person who needs to answer the question, do they have access to all that data? Are they aware that it's collected? Are they aware they have the data at all? Are they confident in the quality of the data? Are the tools available for them to use? Do they have the reports? Do they know the right people? There's a lot of questions that now fall on that person that historically have been problematic. It's go use this tool, go use that tool, and put it all together somehow. So what that means is that these analysts are wasting their time and giving poor answers in the process. So there was a study done last year on data analysts and where they spend their time. And they found that data analysts are spending more than half their time housekeeping. So just accessing the data, preparing the data, putting it together. 3 issues were cited. Number 1, data access. They can rarely or never access a complete range of data sources. Data accuracy is still a problem. Less than a quarter have any type of governance whatsoever. So it was a good confirmation that the space we're looking at is a worthy space to solve problems in. Business intelligence has not really done the job. So our solution, how we're different, we're putting the user at the center of that problem. Instead of throwing a tool at them and saying, here's one more tool, go figure that one out now. We're saying, you're at the center. We want to solve all of your problems. We want to make sure that you have access. The number 1 problem cited, we want to make sure you have access to as much data as you can, as you could possibly desire. We want to make sure it's easy, understandable, and that context comes with it. And we want to do that really, really fast. To get you a lot of data points, we have to be able to do it fast. Now, again, for a comprehensive solution, that means we're going to have a back-end piece to it and a front-end piece. Pulling data together and then presenting it in a usable way. So let's look at this piece, the back-end. Traditional approaches in business intelligence means you've got to go through a lot of steps. Approvals and this developer and that developer and ETL and BI and report developers and project management. There's a lot of steps to that top traditional approach, you see. We've eliminated all of those because we know what the data set looks like that we can ingest, and we know the data model we're putting it into that makes it easy to use. So we've eliminated so many of those steps, and that's how we're able to get to that speed of ingesting new data sets one after another. And again, we can do that in minutes. If we've got the connection set up with the client and they've got one new data set from the existing database, that can happen within minutes. On the front-end side of that solution, That speed allows us to create a metric catalog. We're referring to it as a metric catalog. One place that you can go get any metric that you could ever possibly care about. And that really enriches that front-end experience of making it comprehensive. Again, no additional coding required. It's just configuring those additional data sets to pipe into that catalog. And it really is the cornerstone. Now, I'm not going to talk through all of these. My point here is that once you have that metric catalog, it enables endless amount of analysis and capabilities. And we're going to start checking those off one at a time on our website and our client offering in being able to centralize that data, automate a lot of those tasks, anomaly detection, artificial intelligence, and consistency between departments. A lot of these pains, again, we can talk to them in the Q&A if there's something that interests somebody. But the key point there is the metric catalog is what enables that. Now, my final slide, it's kind of the vision. Like once all of these things come together in a comprehensive and usable way, we're imagining this data situation room where you walk in and that same leader says, what's going on with sales? And I kind of use a bicycle and scooter sales, right? So it's a product company. What's going on with sales? And on the first screen shows, yes, sales are indeed down by 20% last month. And on the second screen pops up and it says, okay, we've looked at every possible combination and it looks like it's bicycle sales in the Northeast, and that floats to the top. You don't have to drill down. You don't have to ask that question. It knows that you care about what particular sub-dimension was down the most in the past month, so it floats to the top. The next screen pops up and it shows all of the influencers. So here's ad sales. Here is your sales team turnover. Here's your distribution network efficiency. And to the top floats the most relevant version of the influencer that could be impacted. And on the last screen shows context. So textual items that people have contributed. And on that screen, you see finally, oh, here's somebody logged a note that a distribution truck had an accident in the Northeast region. The driver is fine, but all bicycles were lost, right? So I've got my explanation. I've got context associated with the metric that I cared about. And then finally on that last screen pops up a little note that says, we've pre-prepared a PowerPoint slide for you that has all of this description in it. Would you like to send this to your manager? So that's how easy we want that to be. We want that to be within seconds versus what that leader had to go to with his 100 questions and finding all the data sources, which can take at least days and probably weeks. So that's our space. Thank you for your time. I will take questions now. Yes, sir.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who had the question? Dave?
So I was talking to your VP of Sales moments before and asked him the question, who are your mentors? He said I-10 might be. Are there other organizations within the St. Louis ecosystem?
There are. We've recently engaged with Gateway VMS. I had our first meeting. Ron Parks, Steve Ebner, and haven't met with the third gentleman yet. His last name is Donahue. They've been great. We've just had the one meeting, but it was very helpful in kind of refocusing us. Every time I have some meeting with someone, it always kind of refocuses and you can kind of go again. So it was enjoyable.
Interesting concept. I have two quick questions. Security implications. So normally in an organization, the reason why there's so many channels that you need to go through is because there's a different level of security as you go up through management, through upper management, and all of those things. How do you address providing the information and securing the data in a way that does not compromise or violate any of the policies or procedures that might be associated with, HIPAA or anything like that?
Right, yeah, so a couple things on that. And that's, when I say users have problems with data access, a lot of people think, oh, well, it's just a permissions issue, why don't they request access? And it's not really that. A lot of times they want to protect the transaction system and not give them direct access to the transaction system. And sometimes it's security. In these cases, we're talking about a group of users who are responsible for answering questions, and they are the group of users who should be getting access, who it shouldn't be an issue of, well, we can't give access to these people because we want to secure it. They are those users that are within the wall that should be getting that access. And on our side, we use, right now we're using an Azure platform in the cloud, but we can deploy pretty much anywhere. we can secure each metric on a kind of on a fact-by-fact basis. We have the ability to do it at a granular level, certain levels of security if we want to. We kind of see this space as being something that, okay, once you're an analyst and you need to answer questions, you get it all. You get to eat from the buffet.
So there's a customization to data specific to that particular role so that you streamline it and it doesn't get log jammed in the process to get to the people that need it.
Right.
So you have to do an analyzation to that role, probably beyond what the company does, to say these are the data sets of information that these people need, and so you need to allow these people to have this access in the beginning to provide that information. That's great.
Exactly. Yeah, we can secure it at an individual level, but we just discourage against it because that's the whole thing. It's like there are certain people who need access to a lot of data. Let's give it to them. Yes.
Wait, oh, microphone. Follow microphone. Yeah, right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I also think it's a great idea, especially the last point where you can just have like a ready presentation that you just click send and then you can send it to your managers and what took days now takes seconds. I guess my question is around you were talking about automating the automation. You might have talked about this in the beginning. I sort of came a little bit late, but how are you pulling in those insights? I mean, it's probably different across across industries, but even in the same industry across companies. I mean, is there sort of customization that needs to happen with your company, with your team beforehand, sort of get things set up, or how do those insights sort of come about?
Yeah. So there's an initial handshake we'll have to do with the client. Obviously, we've got to get access to their systems, security from a cloud perspective, and we don't have to be in the cloud. We can be on site. But in terms of preparation, that's part of that's our unique value proposition, I guess, is that we can ingest any data set without knowing what it is. We only need basic information. Every data set, and when I say data set, I mean like a CSV file or the results of a query, right? A flat data set. It's going to come with either facts, dimensions, or date, right? As long as you just plug in the right thing to saying this is a fact, this is a dimension, this is a date, our process will just ingest it and dynamically build the model that will handle that. So we don't have, that's the automate the automation part, is we don't have to know much more that, oh, this is the product and this is the region. Just tell us those are dimensions and it plugs into the system and automatically kind of shreds it apart.
Do you have, or are you thinking about adding a data validation step to make sure that data isn't garbage coming in?
Yes. Two things on that. We've got, you remember the big circle? I said there's a lot of different stuff it can do. Anomaly detection, right? So if data doesn't come through at all and it ends up blank for a given data set, then we're going to say anomaly, right? So anomaly could be a business anomaly or it could be a data quality anomaly. So alerting is one way that we can address that. On the data quality side, once we find that there's an issue, in my past we've had cases where somebody just fat fingers a number and they put in $2 billion, right? And for the next year, we've got to go back that $2 billion out, right? They'll correct it in the accounting systems and it'll have a negative $2 billion the next day. But we still have this $2 billion inflow of dollars that we have to address in our trends. So we have a way on our import to say, okay, we're going to override that particular data point, and then all of the different splits of that data, handle it and the trends, and you never have to worry about that $2 billion fat finger again. So a couple different ways we address quality.
Are you going to be providing general information, or are you doing, like, for example, corporate intelligence? And the reason I'm asking is, like, you may have company A as a client, and the biggest issue for them is company B, but they don't want company B to learn anything about their own company. So, and vice versa, company B may hire you to do the same thing. How do you keep everything from cross-contaminating, perhaps giving away corporate secrets and you're not supposed to?
Yeah, I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I'll address both of them. Number one, every implementation is completely walled off. We don't share databases. We don't share anything. You get your own completely separate environment. The second thing I thought you were going for was, what if they wanted to compare themselves to the industry? And I think that's probably down the road. Obviously, we'd have to have 10 clients and them all agreed to say, yes, we'll anonymously give our data so that we can get comparisons like an IXI kind of a thing. I'd like to see that in our future. It's probably pretty far out there, but it's an interesting thought once you start kind of piecing through it. But
yeah, exactly. How many customers do you have, and what are sort of the characteristics of the ideal customer for you guys?
I think at last count we had 0 customers. Right now we got 0 customers. That's right. So the ideal customer is really, and that's kind of what we're looking for from this group, is connecting us with the people in organizations who have that guy. The guy who needs to answer questions from the C-level or whether it's the CEO or the chief marketing officer we're kind of looking at. We think that might be a good fit. Anyone who answers questions, we're kind of looking to do that pilot project. So most of what you saw today, we don't have the big wall board and the vision in place, but a lot of what you saw today is ready to go. The metric catalog, we can build that. Everything we talked about and automatically pulling in that data, we can do that. So we're ready to go. We've got the front end side, it's secured. We've wrapped up our last project a few weeks ago. And so we're ready for that pilot client. We just need to make sure to start connecting to the right people in those organizations who feel that pain, who have to answer questions and are looking for our solution. Yes. We got one. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead.
So I want to say that I think what you guys are doing is fantastic, and I think that it's kind of over a lot of people that's in the startup space's heads. But I do want to say that you might want to be connected to the St. Louis Regional Chamber of Vice President of Entrepreneurship, and they will sit down with you and connect you to a lot of different companies that are asking that question. And I would say that you got LinkedIn. I would say start putting up articles about things that are relevant in the space that you're in, and so people are like, wow, like they really know what's going on. And so then people start coming to you with like, hey, I got a question. You're like, well, now we can sit down and we can talk about it, and I can actually help with your sales. And you know what, honestly, like, I'm one of those people, like, the people that I will go and walk to a business that I know might be a client. You might do something for free for somebody and then make that testimonial video about what you did for them. And then that would just set the world on fire of what you can do for people, and people will say like, man, he did it for free for them, and like now they're rocking, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. We've actually looked at a couple of different charitable organizations that we might go to and kind of stand something up for free to have that showcase site. But no, I like where you're thinking with that. Did you get that? The regional? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And just going off that last comment, great ideas. I think that if you were to sort of do some marketing with just sort of, I guess one of my questions, what's the first industry you guys are going after? Is there a certain?
Well, so my co-founder's background more recently is financial services. Okay. So we had started looking at that, but those are big companies, and they're a little harder to get in and longer sales cycles. So
what I was going to say is I think it would be interesting if you just sort of took general industry trends and data and ran it through your system and were able to provide people free presentations or whatever and say this is how easy it is, this is what you can create.
Like an out of the box.
Well, yeah, and then just say if you want to create your own with your own data, click here and go to get started with what we're doing. So that can be a good way to sort of hook people in.
No, I like that.
I like another question, but that thought completely.
Comments are good too.
I'm wondering if you have, so when I see all of your backgrounds of these larger organizations, and I think everyone knows the cost that goes into the development of this sort of thing, I'm wondering if your target market is higher revenue-based organizations, or are you at a cost point where mid-sized organizations can't afford it? Because I think that's part of the challenge with data and with BI systems is that it's very cost prohibitive for small to mid-sized organizations that really are trying to get at this information. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our cost model we're cloud, right? So we've got a very low entry point. We're targeting $500 per month per data set, right? So as those data sets grow, the value we provide grows, your whole company can have access, right? So we like that from the point of the stickiness factor. Like once we're in and we can tie into those different people, as well as consistency across the organization. So we think that works really well. But it's the per data set per month model that we're going after. So 6,000 users, so 1/10 of the data analyst for that entry level point. And if a client wants to put all of their metrics into one CSV file and it's just one data set for us, that's all right.
That's what I was wondering, what's a data set?
A data set is any CSV file or a query result where you can say, okay, this is a date, this is a dimension, this is a fact. And with this fact, you add it up, or you take the most recent, or, there's a little bit of definition that goes into it, and then we just plug it straight in. So yeah, if a company, a small company says, you know what, we don't mind pulling all these pieces together, and then we'll drop it in one file, and then you guys take it in, and we only get billed for one data set, we're okay with that.
Two questions. First one short. How are you funded? Personally?
Personally, yep.
Second question. So, especially with your financial background, so these data situations room are what startups and small businesses might put together for pursuing funding. So GUST has these kind of things where investors go out and look. Do you have a channel or a subset target of aggregating data for the investors so small business can go out and try to do a raise?
So explain that one more time. What would be the data that
you've got your data situation room, and I know people have put those in separate, they lay things out so that they can go out and target raises from individuals out there. That's a small business going out doing a private raise, private placement, or going out maybe doing crowdfunding or whatever it would be when they're trying to raise some money. And bigger companies go out when they go IPO and they put it all together. Okay, here's how we're going to take it out there.
Okay, so like a presentation of those startups' information for the purpose of raising data.
Raising money, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We haven't considered that particular target market yet. That's interesting.
Okay.
That'd be interesting to talk a little bit more about.
Okay, good, thanks.
Oh, sorry. Trying to be fair here.
From an organizational leadership standpoint, it sounds like from the implementation of the product, you've got a great presentation. The thing that I would be interested in is more information about how the implementation happens. So going in, what does the consultation look like, and what building blocks are you establishing? What type of evaluation process are you using for the particular positions to create the data sets? Things like that. I think that's the piece that'll take a large or small organization and make them want to run at your opportunity to present information. That's the piece that would take you over the top. That evaluation standpoint of being able to present it in a way to say, this is how this practically impacts you, and this is how we gain the information. So it's not only about the data sets, but it's the data sets specific to this person, because from our interview, I know these are the things that they need. So your software actually targets that particular software. I think that's the message that takes you over the top.
Yeah, I love your thoughts there. At some future state, we like the idea of a cloud-based offering where a user could come sign up and start providing data sets and us not even know about it until a couple days later. But realistically, I think you're right. Like, there is an engagement, especially starting off, where we have to go in and sit with them and say, okay, this is what a data set means, and it has to have facts and dimensions. And I like your other thought too on tying it to a particular software, because there's certain software out there that's horrible about reporting, especially management reporting. So if we could create a package that says, oh, we know this nice call center software is one example, and we know how to report out of that, and just go to every client that has that nice call center software. So it's yeah, those are good thoughts.
All right, we got 2 questions left, and then sorry, you got to cut it off at some point.
All right, 2 quick thoughts. First, so my company's worked with different data, totally different market. But when we work with data sets like in genomics, they're massive data. And the concern is if you're using a service like AWS or another cloud base, is there a point where the cost is prohibitive? And the second question is there's a lot of corporations now, I guess this is more of a comment, there's a lot of corporations now that will co-develop something with you in order to be first to market and then sell it, across it. It's kind of a different mindset now that it's, instead of trying to build something in-house, you build a capability and then you sell it.
Right.
You own part of it. I don't know if you've considered that kind of model.
Well, we haven't. I don't know, are those usually consulting organizations that kind of want to take a product to market but don't necessarily?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of, actually, corporations now are putting out incubators to help small startups develop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that same kind of idea, except it's, you go to them, you pitch, and they will maybe take some equity in what you're doing, but you would be able to use them and their data as a test case, and then since they have a stake in the success of the organization, it's sold competitively.
Okay.
They just have to make
spin off.
sure, sometimes, it obviously needs to be a situation where it's not going to be giving their competitor something that's going to, hurt their advantage, but this is happening more and more, so it might be something you want to look into.
Okay, no, that's good, that's a good thought. We've been involved in the I-10 Corporate Innovation Program, where they kind of match you up with certain organizations. So we've done a recent pitch with Monsanto, and I think they're less likely, I think, to grab a company and create something and spin it off than to really want to use it within their org. But I think I like where you're headed in terms of the organizations who do that. Your first question was, are we worried about volume? Can that become a problem? Yes, we have guardrails around the data sets that we ingest, but with those data sets, we essentially cube it, if you're familiar with cubes, but we take every possible combination, permutation of the data we get, and it becomes its own metric. And that can get out of hand, but we know there's an Excel spreadsheet we have that helps us understand where those guardrails need to be. And so we run it through that model.
Yeah, real quickly, when you were developing your platform, how many potential customers and what kind of potential customers did you engage with and talk to understand the needs and what the platform should look like?
Right, so my most recent background has been coming out of Scottrade in this exact role, doing this exact thing. So supporting those C-level execs, I get that exact question, not bicycles, but, and I'd have to answer it. And it would be the same question month after month. And so we'd start storing the code, but we still had to go through that same exercise every month of doing that. So as I rolled off Scottrade, I actually used some of my last few weeks there to talk to the team, all my peers and my management, and said, here's what I'm going to do next. What do you guys think about this? Where am I missing? How do I make it that? I heard, I think it was Airbnb do a talk once on how to make like the 10-star experience or the 30-star experience and just going beyond. And so we had a little session around, okay, how do we make that better? Now, how do we make that better? And we've kind of evolved to that data situation room. And maybe even to the point where somebody walks in and your digital analytic assistant just says, I know why you're here, here's the sales problem. And there was an accident with the truck. So that's mostly what we've used. We've had some conversations since then as we've talked to different potential clients and started gathering their feedback. Sometimes it's off base, they just need a different solution, and sometimes it really informs our product. So, but that's been helpful, having those conversations.
All right, final question, then we got to wrap it up. How can the community help you?
So, community can help me. I even made a slide. We did a client, all right? We're looking for a pilot. We want to do, I'd love to do something for a charitable organization or a client who's, interested in, the entrepreneurial community, or somebody just has this problem and says, I'm tired of writing these 100 queries and I just want something to feed it to me. So introductions to those people who have that pain, who have the buying power in the organization. We're ready to meet with those people, and that's where you can help us the most right now.
All right, well, thank you very much.
All right.